Oh, it's like 40 degrees out, and it's just beautiful. Not a star in the sky at all, not that I see, just beautiful. I want to say I had an epiphany that I wanted to talk about earlier that just really hit me hard. And honestly, I don't know how much time I have left. Not like it really matters anyway. And I find that interesting, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because there are some things that matter more than the individual. The epiphany was, it's interesting that so much in my life has felt out of place, like I was in the wrong time, the wrong place, that everything was just wrong for a reason. And that is, I shouldn't actually be here. I shouldn't exist. There's been quite a few incidents where I should have just basically been killed. An accident here, an accident there. And yet I'm still alive. I'm still here. I can't say I've beaten depression completely, but I've beaten the worst of it. I've lost my brother. I've lost some friends. Even lost some old battle buddies. They're gone. I'm not. I'm still here. It's just, it kind of proves the point that there still is a purpose here for me, even though it took me forever to understand some of the things that have been very hard to see, let alone talk about, because they don't fit into any of these categories that are easy to recognize and understand. Having a point, having a purpose, you can't just simply talk about and say, like, hey, there are steps in front of you that you should look at and observe. This is not easy. So people talk about stuff like everyone has a destiny, or they have a purpose, they're called to do this, they're called to do that, they're here for a reason, it must be fate. There are lots of reasons that people come up with as far as why they are here on this earth, why they are who they are, the things that happen to them to a point. Yeah. And I want to say some of it comes from what we've been through that impacts us. For others, it's a genuine impression into our lives from that which we cannot explain, or that which is supernatural. Supernatural in the sense where it's not physical, or most of it is not physical. There are other forces at work other than what is purely 100% physical that we can see. It could be even the paranormal to a point. And I want to say I've noticed a significant lack of significant lack of what is paranormal, can't say the word, that other people can talk about. Yes, there's been 2 demon possessions plus other events that have happened in my life that I have seen personally, face to face. There are things out there that are spiritual, for a lack of a better word. That may be the best word, but again, not everyone who watches and follows me is someone who is a Christian or a believer at all. This, as far as what I said earlier about, sometimes a message and all that is more important than the individual itself. I adopted as my middle name Trainer. Not necessarily trying to replace it outright through like physical documentation, but I adopted that into my life because I always wanted to help others and be helpful and all that. And it took me forever to realize some people are just going to hate you no matter what. The irony about that is I didn't start learning that until after my second employment. Maybe because I was sheltered, maybe because I still had some things to learn and to understand, that some people are just going to be cruel because they can, because they will, because they want to put other people down, they want to hurt them, they want to cause them pain and grief for whatever reason. And to think that this is natural, It is to a point when you start looking at it from the Christian point of view about, hey, sin is in our lives, it causes issues, problems, and people to hurt one another. You be in the military, you gotta take a punch or two. You can't just simply like be there and like get knocked over when the first problem pops up. You know, a war happens, you gotta be ready to, you gotta be ready to get into shit, so to speak. Whatever anyone wants to say or use, you gotta be able to take a punch or two. You can't just simply fall over, or else you have no place being in the military. Anyway, I want to say my life has been very interesting overall, and there's been a lot that has happened that really has made me more appreciative. In the past couple of days, I really have to say I've come a long way. This has not been one step, not just one event, one step. It's been a pattern in my life that I've been able to observe and understand, even though there's very few that just seem to... There's very few... How do I say this? There's a lot that has happened in my life, but very few intersecting lines that connect these two together. So there's a lot of separate, different events. The events that have happened when I was at boarding school, the events that happened in the military, including the entity that was a part of my life for around 13 years. He actually came into my life when I got to my permanent duty station. It's unexplainable. I had a vision, and that's when a lot of things ended up starting and happening to me. And you know what? Maybe it's okay that they don't have an explanation. But there are some things about that, many things about that are explainable. And it's what actually sets me apart and at odds from other Christians, from other believers. Because everything that they say, largely, it's like, well, it's got to be found in the Bible. It's got to be taught personally by God, by Jesus, by other believers who are more mature than you. And these are good points. But ultimately, what God himself in the Bible says is you have to test every spirit that comes to you, that comes into your life, to see if it's from him or from somewhere else. I think I may actually try to find that verse and put it down below in the description for y'all to take a look at. Because this is important. You know, you protect what is precious to you. You don't just simply leave things open for the taking or for someone to come on by and destroy. Now, Satan in the Bible is described as a thief, a murderer, and a liar. He, after all, is in control of a lot that happens down here. And there's a lot of opposition that happens. I've also recognized some things that made me realize I am just one man. And I'm not exactly anyone special or particular, but what has happened to me and the message and all that is important. The entity that was in my life pointed out some very startling things that just revolutionized a lot. And it's what Christians kind of just are very cautious about. They're very skeptical. But there's a lot of similarities that really, once people start understanding it, it's like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And no, you're not different. And it's not like this being was a teacher in a traditional sense. He didn't say a word. I gave him the moniker Dream just because it felt right. There wasn't very much else that just kind of made sense, I guess. And having someone appear to you in such different ways, well, you start talking to other people, are going to be like, you're crazy, man, that never happened. Yeah, okay. You start talking about it, people are going to look at you very differently. They're probably not going to trust you. Ooh, too bright. Yeah, well, whatever. This is my story, not theirs. Having an entity show you what's right, what's wrong, and then point out what is additional, and then pointing out some other truths that I don't really want to talk about here, but they're brutal. They are damn brutal. They're very crushing. A lot of it's hard to take when you're a teenager and you're not exactly seeing reality. You're not like paying bills. You're not living, monitoring everything in your life, financials and all that. There's just a lot there that just was hard to take. It took me years to actually look at this stuff, but in short, he ended up leaving my life after a short conversation, saying that I basically was not letting go and that I needed to let him go. And that was it. It's hard to explain because, again, it's not like he said anything at all. But I understood it. And when he left, there was a nice giant hole in my mind that I can't recall some memories, and there's just a lot of things that just kind of like, they're gone permanently and I'll never remember them. And I won't remember what all was lost. But what I do know is he had to leave in order for me to have a life, to continue the existence I'm currently living in. I don't know if he was a demon or an angel, but he looked evil, or at least what we would consider to be evil. A combination of like a suit of iron, like something Iron Man would make, or and something that came from like the Saw series, Jigsaw, Death Trap. But he had a very old, noble feel to him, regal almost, that like he had been around for years. And I told my parents this when it got to a point where I felt like I could open up and tell them a lot of what has happened, the things that I was experiencing and seeing and understanding. And went to go check and see if it was a demon, but it was not. There was nothing to drive out. So, if it was an angel, a guardian angel or something like that, he was scary for a purpose, a point and a purpose. And it would explain why there was a lack of paranormal activity as far as that period of my life. A lack of things that just other people have experienced and all that. I mean, the demon possessions that I am open and willing to talk about happened well before that. A couple of years before that, in around 2003, 2004. John Hicks, I remember his name, and Barry Edwards, I remember his name as well to this day. I wasn't fully there for what happened to John Hicks, but I saw him get carried out, foaming at the mouth, almost unconscious. And Barry Edwards, I was there from the start to the end. We were inside the building, and he ended up outside, and the short version is me and the other guy that was there, I'm blanking on his name, but we were talking, having a conversation, and Barry kind of dipped his head down and basically looked like he went unconscious, but eventually got up and stormed up and down the hallway swearing and telling us to turn off, swearing, growling, and telling us to turn off the lights. Then went outside, and that's when he kind of woke up. It was roughly like 20 minutes long, and we ended up calling some of the staff members there. I was at a facility for boarding school at the time. It is no longer in operation, and it was shut down probably around 2013, 2011. I'm blanking on the time, but I was the seventh individual to graduate from that particular boarding school. It's an offshoot from another well-known academy, a well-known school. I don't really want to go into it right now, maybe later, but that's not really the focus at all. I don't want to take the focus off of anywhere else but, well, my story and the individual who's been in it, and tying that in with a little bit of the, what sets me apart from other Christians and all that. And it could be very simple as far as the whole, like, my point of purpose here is to help others, just not in the way that I thought, which is fine, because I'm not ambitious as far as like, hey, I'm going to be the president of the United States, or I'm going to have $1 million. Yeah, okay, whatever. Finances are important, but I'm not going to like live my life just to make another dollar or two. What's the point? What's the point of living if you're always chasing after something like that, and you're just living to get more money? Doesn't sound very exciting to me. Doesn't sound like I'll be able to live and to enjoy my life. Sounds like I'll always be stuck pursuing money. And that's just an example. You can replace money with women, with sex, whatever. Same thing, right? You're still pursuing something for who knows how long. What I've always wanted was a family. I always wanted a loving wife, kids, basically be like my parents and have an awesome family. Yeah, I brought a little bit more than that to my parents. I'm joking. I'm talking about the gray hairs and the stress and all that. And parents are usually quick to laugh about that because, hey, every kid gives them gray hair. The stress and all that. Bad jokes aside, having something in my life be there for over 13 years. 2017, he was largely gone, largely quiet, just because I was busy working and focusing on a possible career that just didn't go anywhere, simply because the company that I was working at just went bankrupt. TowerCom, it went bankrupt in 2007, lost a lot of contracts here in North Carolina, shut down, and I was forced out through something that I had to dig up. Of course, I don't believe it was true, but it's not like I could actually prove any of it. I just made sure to secure my social media after that, because I was like, yeah, it seems like you just kind of pulled that out of your ass, because I made this post and I don't see the connection between that and what you are accusing me of. In the end, they just needed to get rid of me somehow because they were going out, and I was like one of the most recent hires that they've had. Still, I have respect for those in TowerCom. And I tried going to other companies after that to see if I could make things work. Things never stuck, and me being new to the industry, I've been over 22 towers so most were in North Carolina with I want to say 2 in Oklahoma, at least 1 in Oklahoma. We traveled up there to help troubleshoot and fix this really messed up area. It got so bad they had to call in a second team. And I do have a couple pictures, so maybe, but whatever. I'll probably do separate videos and show them. Either way, I tried doing TowerCom and basically tried being a tower climber, try to see if I can make that work, and that did not work out as expected. So, yeah, he was largely quiet during that time period. I was also able to get some counseling too, which is great. Like, to help get answers, to help figure shit out. Because let's be honest, coming back from a deployment, I was already cracking. I was like, dude, I need to get out of this unit because I just was not doing well. I was not getting answers. I was not getting help. Basically, people are treating me like I was a broken tool or worse. Like I was the lie that some people were saying I was. Me being the worst person on earth. You know, the name calling, the whole serial killer, child molester, you're a murderer, etc., etc. I gotta say, Sergeant Pulley, he's gone. His brother and family tried to put out a whole bunch of posts saying what a good man he was, and I was like, I respectfully interjected, and I was like, that's bullshit, and I explained the shit that he did to me, pretty much. The verbal, all that. The verbal garbage and all that. It was pretty severe, and I'm trying to be a little bit light, but I'm also trying to be respectful because that man was single-handedly created the biggest obstacle in my life that I guess I am thankful for in the end, because I wouldn't be who I am and I wouldn't be where I am today without him there. Obviously, I never wanted that, and I never, not for a second, and it's not something that, if I could go back over and redo a lot of things, it wouldn't be there, and I would basically be a completely different person. But I can be thankful for who I am and what I've overcome because of him. He's one of those like five defining points and factors in my life as far as that goes. Jeez. Anyway, moving on. As far as this being, I've had a couple visions, and things started off with a bang that is very hard, that I still remember to this day, that just kind of like really just shook me up, where after the vision happened, he just was in my life for who knows how long. Like I said, 13 long years. I kept track. There was this creepy, evil-looking little girl walking up steps towards me because I was in like an attic or something. I don't know. The place felt wrong. It felt old. And she had black eyes. Long hair, brown hair, and black eyes. Like, there's no light in them, no pupils. Just completely black. And this being gets between me and her, who actually looked 3 times worse than her easily. Basically got between me and her and put his arms up. And then ever so slowly turned his head to the left, and I could see like the brightest shade of red in his eyes that I've ever seen. And that was it. She ended up getting unnerved and just kind of like walked backwards down the stairs, never really turning her gaze anywhere else. And he shifted his gaze back to the front. I'll never forget that. And that was the start of a very interesting lifelong journey. And I had an understanding earlier, like 2 to 3 days ago, for whatever reason, that something finally clicked and it made me understand it's very likely he was sent to me as a test to himself, not just simply to be there part of my life. There were instances that made me realize he was uncomfortable and didn't want to be there too, but he did the best he could. He also made it clear that he didn't want to be the center of attention at all, which I can understand why, for a number of reasons. Anything that is truly horrifying and powerful in that sense, as far as, God and angels and all that, they don't ever want to be the center of attention. But he clearly did not look like an angel, not at least what other people have described him to be. But he also wasn't like those videos that say real angels look like this, biblically accurate angels look like this. He wasn't like that and covered with eyes either. I find that incredibly interesting. Yeah. So, moving on. Me being who I was, wanting to be like my parents, wanting to help others, and I guess make a name for myself, to be someone important. And after everything that I've been through between now and 2003, even before that, because there's been a lot that's happened in my life. And like I said, I shouldn't be here. Even when I was a kid, shouldn't be here. It's taken me years to come to accept that it's fine. And if there's anything else that will pop up, it will pop up and I can talk about it. Being thanked by dozens and dozens of individuals for being open, for being transparent, and presenting thought-provoking material to them that lightly challenge them. Not in their face and not with the intention of causing harm, causing damage, causing drama and controversy, nothing like that. But just being like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? This is what I see. And presented in such a way that it's like, oh, well, that's pretty interesting. Didn't know that. Didn't think about that. Never occurred to me. Something like that. There's a lot of things in this life that happen that just will take time to process. And some of it's beyond our comprehension for the time being. Like when you're a kid, some things you won't understand until you're an adult. Life needs to happen. I want to say I always wanted to make this channel be dark and foreboding and evil in that sense. And it never really sat right with me doing the way things I did. But in the end, I came to just kind of accept that it is what it is for the time being, and I'll make slight improvements because this isn't a channel that other people should be afraid of or even wary of. There is a lot of emphasis on darkness for a reason, because darkness is not inherently evil or wrong. It is natural. It is used to hide. Obviously, it is also time for people to sleep. Normally. I work night shifts, so whatever. The point I'm trying to say is darkness is here, whether we like it or not, and there's a purpose for it, and it is not wrong or evil. God himself has been stated in the Bible to use darkness to cover himself. And as far as the story about God passing over the cave, the crevice, whatever you want to call it, that Moses was in, so that he saw only the backside and not the full glory of God, does give an indication there. Also, another place in Job that does refer to God using the darkness. It was, after all, one of the first things in creation that came into existence. Light and dark. Yeah. They kept it very simple for a reason. You don't talk about the void. You don't talk about outer space in ways that are understandable because there's no way to measure them. There's no way to understand them. Back then, without technical instruments of some kind. It has only been very recent in the past 3 to 6 months, if I am correct, of scientists being able to see inside of a dark hole, because there are 3 layers that they talked about. Once you get past the first layer, right at a certain point, you can see the other layers, but then the communication gets cut off as light itself cannot escape from the black hole, excuse me. And it is very beautiful in order to, seeing this. But the point I'm trying to say is technical stuff in order to understand what all is out there is not something that we all have in hand. We are living here right now, so there are a lot of tools made available, but back then, hundreds of years, no, definitely not. Yeah, living your life with having, or rather living 13 years of your life, coming to grips with a lot of things that have happened. And yes, I've had over 25 years of anger in my life, which is probably another topic that I may cover later down the road, because that is very important. You can't just go through life having that much anger and still be alive today and not in jail or not dead or anything like that. I processed through a lot. And I got here with help. I couldn't have gone here without it. And this isn't a mark of shame, because here's the thing. We're all broken in a lot of ways. I came back from my deployments. I'm broke, sure, whatever. And as I tell other people, this isn't like, oh, you're broke, everything's done, everything's gone, you might as well just go up and die. People are like crackers. Just because we break doesn't mean things end. We merely change. Crackers sometimes are broken just because they're too long, and it's not going to fit in someone's mouth all the way, Realistically, think of all the different crackers out there. The ones that are in circle shapes, the ones that are like in the long rectangular shapes. You crack them half the time anyway. Sometimes you just put cheese right in between the two. The point is, we're like crackers in that sense, where things don't end, they just change. This different perspective that was granted to me, I hated it at first. I really did. I was afraid, I was upset, I was angry. I didn't want this individual in my life. I didn't want him there. I wanted him gone. Still, I learned a lot of things. In time, I realized why he left. And yes, I'm skipping out a lot for a reason. I understood that for me to actually truly live and become me, he had to leave. I think he was a protector of some kind. I think he was being tested. I know he didn't want to be there. He didn't say a word to me. He didn't say a damn word to me. He communicated in other means, other ways. Images, visions. He pointed things out, and he waited for situations to pop up before he would point out and be like, check that out, check that out. Obviously without saying a word, but he would point to specific things. And I began to understand him better because of that. Pointing the way through the darkness and pointing the way to Christ. And just earlier, a couple hours ago, after the men's Bible study that I was previously at, I understand when other Christians say that we are taken out of the darkness into the light. But there's been a lot in my life that has been contrary to that, or rather contrasting, against that, where I've been led through the darkness, not into the light, but there are areas with light in them. And I guess it does set well up with what I've understood about how you can show God and Christ are real to others by showing them the garbage and the trash and making sin evident to them. Not just simply, here's miracles, here's this good stuff, believe in God because, there's blessings and a lot of beautiful things and this and that. Basically the good stuff. The real stuff, the garbage. Showing that sin exists is also incredibly important. You need bad examples like you need good examples. You need those red flags like you need those welcome home mats. You just need to know what you're warning others of and which others you are welcoming in or welcoming of. Like, please, come on in. You are welcome. That sort of thing. I also recognize, this is a very, 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 very minor point, but I recognize the fact that my birth father was probably involved with some things that could come into play. He was supposedly killed before, or died before, back when I was probably 1 or 2 years old. So he was well out of the picture for all my life at this point. I can understand why a lot has happened in my life at this point, looking back, me being 37 and all. And I can understand why so many others are very skeptical and hard to believe. But you know what? That's fine. All I can do is share my story, share how God has impacted my life, what I've been able to observe and understand and learn, and point that out. Now, incidentally, the men's channels, men's groups, and all that, being able to understand and find answers outside of the Bible to these issues and problems and questions that I've had in my own life has been very, very testing and something that I have come to appreciate after years. I will not ever accept being single for the rest of my life. I will not accept some of the other things that are in my life currently, but I did come to the conclusion that I accept where I'm at presently. This stuff is in my life for a reason, whether I like it or not, and I do have to come to grips with it. But it does not mean that I will accept it. I guess you could say it's like a thorn on my own side, as Paul had a thorn in his side. And I understand that too, just as Paul did, because pride is a bitch. Pride is one of those things that will kill you or kill the opportunities in your life. Because it changes the perspective from God or from your mission or whatever to you. In fact, that is one of the main differences between, and I already said this a couple other videos, but I'll repeat it here too. That's one of the main differences between the whole, being the best version of yourself and sanctification. It is, what's the word? I just suddenly lost track of my thoughts here. The point is, the attention goes from what you believe in, what you're focusing on, basically from God to you. And no matter how good it is, you start changing your focus, and things things just start going from one to the other, to you. Jeez, I can't talk. So the focus shifts from God to you. I had the strangest feeling just now. I'm not going to get into it. Either way, I'm going to wrap things up here. The last thing I will say this too. I've always been aware of other things out there. And it's been a blessing having the protection in my life, questionable or unquestionable, like my parents versus this other entity. And this other entity, there's a lot that goes into it, where I do have a very strong suspicion that he was sent by God. But he defies everything that I know as far as what other Christians would say. And that is what has bugged me for years, is because it's not the way it happened that happened to others. They didn't have they had some shining figure that looked like it was clearly from God, from heaven. It was the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. And for me, it's like, just the exact opposite of that. Almost like it was the Grim Reaper himself. Or worse than the Grim Reaper. Which, I guess, is comforting to know. If you have something with that much power, yeah, everything else is going to be afraid of that, because their lives are at stake if they're around me. Which also that makes sense when you look at it from the point of view where Satan did make an offer to me once, which I declined. I thought about it for 5 minutes, and I declined. I was respectful about it too. And here's the thing, and I will actually end on this note too. I've learned that some people choose to be confrontational with the devil. After my time watching that show, Lucifer, it's the DC version of Lucifer and all that, where they take things loosely and they try to make it very interesting with, the comics and all that. It's not the biblical Lucifer. I understood that if there could be a chance for a conversation between myself and the devil, without trying to be killed or whatever. How do I say this? You could probably sit down and have a chat with the devil if there was something in there to act as a mediator. Leaving someone alone with the devil is like leaving food alone with a pet. It's going to be gone. I'm not saying we're food. I'm just saying that we're as helpless as food. Remember, as the Bible says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, against the forces of this world. Or something along the lines of that. It's basically, our fight is not against humans, but it's against what is spiritual. I think the different translations and all that, they'll say something different. All right. Until next time. This has been my testimony. And each time I tell it, it's going to be different, for better or worse. There's always things that I remember and always things that I just like, I wish I would have said this, I wish I would have said that. Why did I open about this? Why? I made a fool of myself. Yeah, cool, whatever. That is one of the beauties of just having a message, but not being someone, something special. Because it's not you that matters, it's the message that you carry that matters. And there's a lot of things that just kind of go over your head that you don't need to worry or stress about. And I'm fine with that. Until next time, it's been In His Mind.